Lag Boimer, we're celebrating a man that saved humanity. In the time of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, humanity was already in very deep trouble. People were busy with the wrong things. People didn't value anymore what was previously valued by all. Wisdom, understanding of truth, knowing the difference between illusion and reality. People were busy with accumulating possessions. People wanted power over other people. People misunderstood reality in a very deep way. And so the wise, who still received the ancient tradition, who still knew what the truth looks like a little bit, every generation lost tremendous amount of knowledge and understanding and appreciation, until from one generation to the next, it was almost as if nothing was given over, because even though to the next generation the information received seemed like very deep wisdom, to the one giving over, it seems like utter stupidity. It's like the student didn't even understand what the teacher was trying to teach. And this is all because humanity lost its peace of mind. Humanity can no longer think clearly. There were so many wars and conflicts happening that the wisdom could not fully penetrate the hearts any longer. And so Reb Shimon Bar Yochai did something that turned out to be what saved Judaism. He wrote down things that, if they would have been known at the time, would have been very problematic for Judaism and for how the other nations would interact with the Jews. And so he wrote down secrets about the true nature of reality, secrets that were purposely concealed in the Torah Shebechsav and in the Torah Shebal Peh. But these secrets are the core of the tradition. These secrets are the reasons why the leaders decided to do what they do, and why the Torah was given over the way it was given over. And so if these secrets didn't exist, or even if they existed but we didn't have a reliable source that was accepted by the majority of Klal Yisrael, then the Torah would lose its meaning permanently. We would never be able to recover the message that was being given over, at Mount Sinai 3,500 years ago. So Reb Shimon, about 2,000 years ago, is the middleman between 3,500 years ago and now, where if we didn't have someone in the middle letting us have a little peek at what the wisdom was trying to do, then our minds, our brains, our way of seeing life would never be able to relate to the ancient language with which the Torah was written. And so human brains are constantly evolving, and the generations speak differently. If the Zohar was available in the time of Moshe, people wouldn't understand what it's saying, because their brains didn't work that way yet. They didn't know how our brains are going to function. We can try and reconstruct how their brains functioned. Obviously will fail. We can't even reconstruct what a person next to us is experiencing, but they had no idea who they're writing to. There was no way for them to really know. But they knew what they know, and they knew what's important. And they knew that whoever won't know this is going to be in a lot of trouble. And so Reb Shimon is translating for us, translating the ancient wisdom in a language that is closer to our hearts, is closer to our perception. But 2,000 years is a long time. So even to understand Reb Shimon is very distant for us. And so Reb Shimon lives a life where he designates his entire being to wisdom. He's 13 years in a cave, just studying the inner workings of how spirit, infinite form, that can be anything, gets translated into a biological being. And this is achieved by being separated from all the activity. Because as soon as the mind is concerned with the activity, the mind is not as concerned with the operations beyond it that create the mind in the first place. So Reb Shimon was on such a level that he knew the time when he was going to be taken. And before he was taken, he had something prepared his entire life that he wanted to say in those moments, and that's what he said. And then he left. When he left, he was with some of his students, and a couple of them passed away with him when he left, because the revelation of what he was saying was so high that they could no longer return. And this is because these people had developed in wisdom so much that when they realized something true, their entire reality changed. Their entire biology changed. This is when the Nefesh HaMedaber has become so developed that this is the entire being. Because as long as the other parts of the being are more dominant, then no matter what is said to that Nefesh, they won't leave the body. Words just simply can't do that to that Nefesh. But the more the Nefesh is developed, the more it realizes what is being said, it realizes the depth of truth. And that has implications, that has effects on the biology, that makes the experience different. And so Reb Shimon is teaching his students some of these secrets. And we're going to try to look, this is called the Idr Zit, it's in Parshas Azinu of the Zohar. And he's teaching about the source of life as it manifests into reality, as it becomes everything that is. It goes through a level that's called Atika Kadisha, the ancient holy one. Now, when we're dealing with spiritual levels, the further we go back, the higher the light. And this is because humanity has been defining itself more and more over time. And as they define themselves, they lose access to the infinite. So they become smaller and smaller. The more defined they are, the less space they take up in the spiritual world, the less power they have. Because their power is that they can also be that, but they can be many other things. So when they define themselves, they chose one out of many options for whatever definition they took. And they lose access to all those options. So they're losing power. They're becoming smaller and smaller. So the ancient world, when man began, he had no limitations. And then as he started defining himself, he started going down lower and lower on the ladder of consciousness and becoming something smaller and smaller. So what we're looking for when we're davening, when we're trying to connect to our ancient roots, to the spirit, undefined. So we say, Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'neshuva, return us, Hashem, and we will return. Chadesh yemenu kekedem, renew our days like in the ancient past. Renew our experience like it was in the beginning, before we added all this junk, all this opinion about what we are that somehow got frozen into the fabrics of society. People's opinions became realities until humanity is very strictly defined how it's supposed to experience its experience over here. Each society, each community might have extremely different definitions, but each one will keep its definitions in a very stringent way. And that's how small we become, because then there's no real expression of our nature. There's no longer a nature, there's just opinions. And everybody is going in accordance with that. And so, Atike Kadisha, the holy ancient one, means the undefined one, the open one. And over there, there's no judgment. There can be no judgment. It's Kula Rachamim. And this is how the world can stand. If the way we think was the way the Creator thought, we wouldn't be here. So the world stands because our brains were first designed by them, by those who were a lot less judgmental about who we are and what we're supposed to be. And then later it developed all the nuances. And so we feel the nuances. It's real in us. We have the structure to support it. But what keeps us alive is the more basic interpretation of, yes, I want to live. I should be here. If it was dependent on our moods, we wouldn't be here. And so the ancient Holy One is the source of mercy, undefined mercy, mercy for everything and everyone. If it exists, then the ancient Holy One has mercy on it. And this is why the ancient Holy One is imagined with a long white beard and long white hair. It's like a grandfather who sees the grandchildren. He doesn't really care about their grades before he hugs them. And so Reb Shimon was teaching the nature, we can't even call it nature because the ancient Holy One doesn't have a nature, but the way of how this intelligence that's still alive in all of us, because we received life from the tree of life after them. So they're in us. They're alive inside of us and they're listening to us. They developed our basic functions. They developed our basic interactions with life and how we interpret our emotions and how we interact with each other based on the different feelings that we have. A lot of the expressions that we say to each other are still from them, especially if we keep to the Jewish tradition, which is directly linked to them. For example, if we meet somebody and we say, Shalom Aleichem, we say, peace be upon you. This is an ancient tradition, to bless someone with peace when we meet them. This is not something someone today would come up with. People today are not even aware. Like, maybe they'd say, money be upon you. I don't know. Peace is not really on the list of things that people are concerned about. And so, let's see if we can find a piece that can give us a little insight into the nature of this ancient Holy One. Because if we want to receive forgiveness, and I am quite certain that each one of us wants to receive forgiveness, then we need to gain access to the patterns of thinking and the ways of life of this ancient Holy One, because he has it made. Whoever is with him, whoever is in this way of living, can never go wrong. The reason we can go wrong is because we've lost access to that. We've lost access to that because we judge each other. And then we judge ourselves. And as soon as we judge, we get kicked out from the patterns that are only compassion, of course. Those two cannot exist in the same organism. And so then we wake up the Midas Hadin. Midas Hadin says, oh, you're right, something wrong, this guy did it wrong. But how about you? How are you doing? Everything right by you? This is intrinsic. It doesn't matter if we're consciously thinking that. This is the nature of reality. This is the response of reality to your thought. Whether you suppress it or you think it, the effect is still there. And so the ancient Holy One is above all that. And he lives in a place that only has good, that only has a pure desire to help. And from him comes forth the intelligence, the wisdom called Chachma. And Chachma develops this desire for good into specific details that we eventually know as ourselves. It still goes through a few more phases before these details become us. And these details can get contaminated by our own opinions before it becomes us. But when it comes out originally from the life force, the only desire is to make things better. This is the nature of everything in reality. They want to make things better. Even the harshest of enemies that we have within, even the most demonic, they were designed to make things better. It's the only reason they're here, and they're going to. When the world returns to its former glory, it's going to be because the demons did their job. If not for those demons, then humanity would have lost its way and never returned. And then we wouldn't have the suffering of the demonic, but we would never have the ultimate good. We wouldn't even know that we're missing it. And so everything is there coming from the wisdom, and as it comes out into reality, it's doing the best it can with reality. But when humanity is ignorant, that doesn't come out so nice. When humanity is in line with the truth, then it comes out beautifully, it comes out perfect. And so our beliefs decide how this reality is going to unfold. Is what's best for us going to be best for us now? Or maybe now, because of our beliefs, what's best for us is not yet best for us and it cannot come forth. So let's see. Okay. Starts like this. This is a piece in the middle, but it's speaking of the ancient Holy One that we want to discuss. It says, V'itaime, if you're going to ask, Man Atika Kadisha, who is this ancient Holy One? This Atika Kadisha is the source desire for life to exist. This desire is present in all manifestations. If a manifestation is here, if an animal is here, if a creature is here, if a fish is here, if a molecule of anything is here, there was a desire for it somewhere, somehow. Just like if I see someone move a limb, there was a desire in them for some reason. It may be because they're going towards something, they want to take something, or it may be because they're running away from something. There's a mosquito, they're pulling away, but there's a desire for that limb to move or it wouldn't move. And all movement inside of us have a desire prior to manifesting. The same goes for everything within reality. The same goes for every manifestation within reality, for all behaviors, all interactions with life. Everything comes first through the desire and then it manifests into reality. So this Atika Kadisha, this ancient Holy One, is part of this desire. This is when this desire was uncontained by any considerations, because the awareness was just there. The awareness of self as self, without any details. The details didn't yet exist. So it says, Manatika Kadisha, who is this? Tochazi, come and see. Le'ele, above and beyond, is the loy isyada v'lo ishtemoida v'lo isrishim. V'hikol koila. He says above, beyond everything that we know, there is one that is not known and cannot be known because he has no definition. So what he's saying now is all the different discussions that we're having about God, the God that is supposed to be the one that's beyond everything, the one that created life, that God is not knowable. No one ever knew him, and no one will ever know him, because just like a letter that's written by a scribe cannot know the scribe, so too a brain that was created by a being that is beyond it cannot know its creator. Because to know its creator is to know how to create a brain. To know how to create a brain is to be beyond the functions of a brain. The brain thinks, imagines, hypothesizes. The force that created us is the intelligence that makes all be. We cannot know it. To know it is to be it. To know it is to know how it feels. That's the only knowledge. There are no other definitions. And so we're not talking about that. Judaism doesn't talk about that. That one we cannot talk about. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the force that decides our destiny. The force that decides our destiny is the wisdom that one used as a tool to create us. That wisdom is still creating us. If we want to appease reality, then we need to align with that wisdom. And so what's the wisdom? The wisdom is that humanity is the one that shaped its own destiny. Humanity received the tools, humanity received the intelligence, and then they shaped their own destiny. This is why the Pasuk says, if we're going to ask for the ancient days, for the first days, from the day that Hashem created man on the earth, so Chazal teach us, you can only darshan, you can only try to understand from when man was created, what happened since? How did this happen? How did we become the way that we are? And to understand this, we need to understand the spirit that lives within man and decides his destiny. And so, the one who created everything that is beyond everything, the spirit before it got dressed up into the elements, into the nature that we know, into all the different forms of life that we know, nobody can know that spirit. That spirit is beyond definition. But as it started to dress up and to become us, from there we can talk. And so what happens above, the one that is beyond, he makes no signs, he has no definition. We call it kol, he includes everything. Nobody is separate from him. No matter what you do, you're not separate from him. If you exist, then you're with him. So the one that is beyond everything, he is not counted, he's not mentioned. There's no calculation that could bring us to him. The only place that we can touch that being is in the desire of the heart. Although Itmar, on this one we learned, Amarti Eshmer Derochai Michatoi Bilshani. I said, I will protect my ways from sinning with my tongue, with my language. Meaning, if I gave any definition to that one, then I'm definitely wrong. And I wouldn't want to offend him. So from there, we cannot talk. From there, it's not possible to even try to define. And therefore, whatever we weren't designed to do, we shouldn't do. If we try to do it, we're hurting ourselves for no reason. So if we put definition on the one that's beyond all, and we say, oh, I think I know what he wants, you're hurting yourself. You're going to end up making yourself guilty for no reason. This is what Reb Shimon said, that he himself could remove judgment from all of humanity. He says, I'm big enough, I'm wise enough. Lifter skala elam kila min adin. To get everybody out from judgment. Because he understood everyone. He understood why they are the way that they are. Until there was no judgment. This means to sweeten the judgment in its source. The source is where it comes from. Where does it come from? How did it happen? Did you create it? Do you know how it works? Can you control it? So Reb Shimon could explain every single one why things are happening the way that they're happening. If you can explain it, then they're no longer guilty. Then they themselves will have to agree that they're not guilty. And if there are no guilty ones, there'd be no hell. We created hell when we created guilty. Because the spirit follows its own trajectory in the body, and even more so after it leaves the body. Because then there's nothing grounding it, there's nothing holding it back from expressing to itself its own projections. And so, Asar de Sherisa Ishtikach Matika Kadisha. Where do we start? We start from Matika Kadisha, from the ancient one. The Isnir Mazola that comes directly from the Mazel. The Mazel is the life force as it's flowing from beyond. This is the first place from where we can start talking. Not that we can know it, not that we can describe it, but we can say that there is something like this, that it exists. Before that, we cannot even say exists. We're not qualified to even make that statement. We don't know. We don't know what it means to exist. But from Atik Kadisha, we know it exists. Why do we know it exists? Because we're here. If it didn't exist, we wouldn't be here. So because we're qualified to say that we exist, so we can say that everything inside of us that makes us be exists. And that includes the entire trajectory of the tree of life from the most ancient of our species, the way that they started, all the way to the present. This is why we look the way we look, we think the way we think, we act the way we act. Everything, all the answers can be found if we start taking ourselves apart, going back for thousands and millions and billions of years. Then we'll have all the answers. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks Iyov when he comes and complains about reality, saying that he doesn't understand the necessity for pain. And Hashem asks him, Efa Yisa b'yaz dieretz, where were you when I started creation? Do you know how everything works, that you're saying that pain is unnecessary? Can you explain to me how all the different parts come together to create this reality so that you can show me that pain is unnecessary? And so from this beginning, that's coming directly from the Mazel, from the source, from there comes forth an intelligence that has 32 different directions, 32 different pieces, 32 different parts. These 32 parts are the 32 parts discussed in Sefer Yetzirah. These are the 32 letters and the 10 Nekudas, the 10 spheres. And these 32 forces are called Elohim, the divine forces. These divine forces created everything. So these divine forces, where do they come forth from? Where's the first time that they interact with reality as defined forces separate. That's after they come through Atika Kadisha. And from there comes the intelligence called Chachma, which includes these 32 forces. It comes from the hidden brain, from the light within it. So this is happening to you right now also, because you're a miniature universe. The fact that you're thinking now means that there's a light coming forth from within your hidden brain, which means the part of your brain that's unconscious, that is completely undefined, and then it gives life to 32 different intelligences that are running your organs and your limbs. This is how you can exist. So your relationship with these 32 forces is what dictates everything that's going to happen to you in this life and beyond, because they leave their imprint as you experience them. The light that the Ancient One shines in the beginning, this is the beginning of what will be revealed. It becomes 3 heads. And 1 head includes them. And these 3 heads, they go forward to the small face. From this, everything shines. So what he's saying is, this beginning, this Ancient One, as he gets revealed, he becomes 3 heads. These 3 heads are called Chachma, Bina, and Das. Chachma, Bina, and Das, if we want to see it in the human being, we might call the Keser, which in where is the Atika Kadisha, is the Gilgolet, the skull, which holds within it the brain. The brain is Chachma. Within there, the forces get defined, the 32 forces that are running the intelligences within the body. And then there's Bina, understanding, which is within the heart. Within the heart, there is the intelligence that interprets how is this information that is in my brain relevant to me? What does it mean to me? Do I like it? Do I hate it? Does it make me happy? Does it make me angry? When it gets personalized, this is already the Bina. And the result is the Das. The Das is your perception of self. This Das is where Adam Rishon caused separation, and this awareness of self started going to Tov and Ra, the Eitz Hadas Tov and Ra. Suddenly, the awareness of self sometimes thinks the self is evil, and this is the source of all evil. Because when the awareness imagines the self as evil, now there's evil. If the awareness would never imagine a self as evil, there would be no evil. So all evil behavior comes first from the awareness, the Das, imagining the self as evil. Now this is why after the redemption, the Eitz Hadas that we ate from, we're going to learn how to distinguish. And we're going to eat only the good, and we're not going to touch the bad. And this way we're going to have the benefit of what we gained from this experiment, that now we're going to be able to interpret everything to good. Before we were neutral. We couldn't even tell good from evil. So we didn't have the ability to look at ourselves as evil, but we also didn't have the ability to see ourselves as good. We just were. But now we're going to be able to interpret for good, because we've already tasted what it's like when we interpret for evil. And so these 3 heads, the Chachma, the Bina, and the Das, come forth from the Keser. The Keser is the open desire, within which is the Atika Kadisha. And from there, it goes to the small face. Who's the small face? So in the body, the Keser, like we just discussed, the Keser, the Chachma, the Bina, they're represented by the head. The head is called the Moichin. The Moichin is the ability to perceive. And then it goes down to the Midas. The Midas, they live in the body. And the body represents our ability to feel. The Midas are ready when the information that's in the head gets interpreted by the organs into what it means to us. And then we feel it. We feel the information in our body. So this represents the smaller face. In this face, we can get into a lot of trouble. In the ancient Holy One, it's also called Arich Ampin, the long face. There's patience, an infinite amount of patience. There's peace, there's compassion. In the Midas, in the Eir Ampin, sometimes the mood is like this, sometimes the mood is like that. And this is how we receive life, this is how we receive reality. And so from there comes the light from the three heads into the Eir Ampin, into the body and the Midas and the interpretations. And from there, everything shines. All the organs are now functioning properly if the information is flowing smoothly and everything is okay. If the information is getting judged in a harsh way by the Midas, by the attributes, now the function of the body is starting to be affected. Izgelif hai chachma v'apik chad nahara, the nogid v'nofik lashko ginsa. So there forms from within the chachma a light that comes forth and goes out to give water to the garden. So the garden represents the body, the life force inside the body, the awareness that is within the body is the garden of the soul. This is the piece of land that it has to land on this planet. If that piece of land is nice and comfortable and fruitful and happy, then the soul has a comfortable piece of land to live in. If the piece of land is filled with thorns and it's filled with judgments and constraints, then the soul doesn't have a piece of land where it can express itself. The soul doesn't have access to this planet. And so from the wisdom, from the source that comes out from the life force as it expresses itself and then gets to these 32 forces, from there comes out a desire. It's called like a river that's coming to give water to the garden. And based on how this life force is being interpreted, the garden is either going to get the right sustenance so that it can be in the proper conditions, or it's going to get bitter sustenance that's going to dry it up, and then the soul won't have where to be. It won't have access to this planet. So it comes out the river, it goes into the head of the small one, of the attributes. It becomes one brain. From there it comes forth and it gives the drink for the entire body. It gives sustenance to all these plants. This is what it says in the Pasuk. A river comes forth from Eden. Eden is the nefesh, the life force that is at peace. From that life force comes forth a river. That river gets interpreted by the wisdom, gets understood by the heart, results in the das, in the perception of self, who is perceiving, and then it comes forth into the midas, into the attributes, lahashkes sagan, to give sustenance to the garden, to feed the entire body. T is Gelev HaChachma, again, the Chachma takes on shape. It comes forth into the head of Zerampin, of the attributes, and it creates another brain. This slide that gets pulled forth from it. These two flows have received form. They connect to a head that's at the depth of the well. Through his das, the Tahoim, the abyss, gets split. It goes into the head of the small face. It creates another brain. From there it goes forward into the body. It fills up all the different vessels, all the different rooms, meaning all the different organs of the body that need energy. They all receive energy from this. The gufa through the awareness, the das, all the rooms get filled. So what he's saying is that the wisdom comes forth from the life force. The life force gives it forth because of its desire to do good and to create better. And then as it gets understood, now it becomes your awareness, and from there things can go wrong. There, Adam Rishon already separated us from the perfect perception, and therefore our das, our understanding, our interpretation is not aligned with the truth. And so we don't receive the full life force the way that it intends to give to us. And so based on the das, the entire body is functioning. The das is causing what's going to happen with this body, how this body is going to age, how it's going to interact with life, how it's going to interact with different potential diseases that it needs to fight off. Everything depends on the das. This is why Chazal say, the dabe kulabe, one who has das has everything. And the loy dabe mabe, the one who doesn't have das, what does he have? What can he possibly have? If it doesn't result him in das, then he has nothing. Because the das is in charge of everything. Because that's our weakness and that's our strength. If we use the das for our benefit, then it's the most powerful tool we have. But if our das is not aligned with reality, then that's our greatest weakness. That's the source of all our troubles. Ve'ile nahar, and all these lights are shining. Menehire dahi moichi Eloi, from the shine of that higher brain. Eloi stemor, the hidden one. The nor b'mazle, that receives the light from the mazel. The mazel that shines directly to Atika Kadisha. V'choyle dobedatal, everything is dependent one on the other. V'iskasher dubedu, and they're tied one to the other. V'dubedu, one to the other and the other to the other, meaning in both directions. Until we will realize that it's all one. It's all that same ancient one. And nothing could possibly ever separate from him. Everything that we are is because this is how it came out to be. Everything. There's no way for us to outsmart anything over here. And as long as we're trying to outsmart something, we're losing. Because we separate ourselves from what it is. It already wants us the way that we are. Otherwise, it wouldn't make us this way. But we're the ones who are having trouble being okay with ourselves. We're the ones who can't seem to make peace with what he decided we should be. And then, when we're not at peace with it, we suffer. He's still trying to do it. He's still trying to make it better. His commitment is eternal. He has so much compassion. He allows us to make all the trouble, and still he will support us, and still he will give us life. No matter how wrong we get it, he's still there. So Ilan Tlas Nahoren, these three lights, Naharim Letlas Achnunin, Beker Navon, they shine to three other ones that are called the patriarchs. The patriarchs are the first three attributes, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So Chachma, Bina, and Das, the three heads, they shine to Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes. Avraham receives from Chachma, Yitzchak receives from Bina, and Yaakov receives from Das. V'ile Naharim Lebnein, and they shine to the children. The children is Netzach Od Yesod. The next three spheres, the spheres that start interpreting all this information into the physical. V'choyle Norma Sarchad, and all shines from one place. Kadizgal Yahai Atika, when this ancient one is discovered, Rav the Ravin, the desire of all desires, Koyle Nor, everything shines. So everything finds itself in perfect happiness. So High Chochmasa, this wisdom, the wisdom that comes forth from the life force as it starts to be interpreted by these 32 forces, this Chochma is called Ikra Eden. V'hai Eden is Mashech Me'eden Ilo Estimur Dechol Stimin. It comes forth from the Eden, that is the hidden one beyond all that are hidden. In Mehai Eden Ikra Sharisa, from this Eden starts the beginning. The Ba'atika Ikra V'lehav Sharisa Simin. In Atik itself, you can't even count it as a beginning. We know it's there, but it's so undefined that it's not considered the beginning. The beginning is once there's Chachma, once there's 32 forces. Once there's a definition of 32 forces, then there's the beginning of something that we can relate to, even though we cannot relate to these 32 forces as they are in the wisdom, only we can relate to their manifestations, and we can identify them and recognize them as they interact with reality. But they're too abstract to be considered while they're still in the wisdom, because it's this wisdom that creates us. It's these 32 forces that create our brain, that create all the activity that's happening to us. So we cannot identify them as that, but we can know that they're there. And therefore, because it's the 32 forces, we call it the beginning. And begin to have a Shirisa because there's no beginning or end in Atika. La'ikra Ata, we cannot relate to him as you. He cannot be called you. Begin discussing Gali because he's hidden and cannot be revealed. Vekir who? That's why we call him him. We don't call him you. We call him him. Who is he? He is the one that we cannot know. You is the forces already that we can identify. We identify the wisdom, we can say you, because there's something there to be identified. But what's beyond cannot be identified. From where there is a beginning, Ikra, then you can say you. V'ikra of, and that's called our Father. D'chsiv ki ato avinu. You are my Father. You, the forces that I can see, are my Father. You created me. This is how I got to be me, is because something that I can relate to created me. That's the Father, the one that already has a beginning, something we can consider. So this is the beginning of the process of manifestation that becomes us. And this process, the way that it dresses up, results in our beliefs. And these beliefs result in our entire experience. So Reb Shimon, before he leaves the world, he explains to his students the deepest secrets of how the ancient one, the one that is one, the one that was there before life became life, and the one that is still there after life became life, how he started to prepare to dress up as what we are. And why is he saying that now? Because he's getting ready to leave the world. Where's he going when he's leaving the world? He's going back to that one. And so this is why he's saying what he's saying, and he says later on in the Idra, to show that he's leaving his body. It's not that his body failed him. His wisdom allowed him to know himself, to know the spiritual forces that make him be in such a way that he was in charge of everything. And he knew his time, and he knew where he's going and why he needs to go there. And he prepared himself by explaining what it is that happened when the spirit took on form. And then he simply did that same procedure in reverse and released himself from his presence on this planet. And so this shows the clarity of mind that he had until the very last moments. And this is simply through knowing himself as himself. He had what we all have, but he knew that he has it. And when he knew that he had it, then all the angels knew that he had it. And they had to follow his direction, because that's what they were created to do. But he knew it. He believed it. He understood it. He lived it. And because he lived it, he was capable to leave what he left for humanity, which is going to result in the redemption of humanity. This is the role that he played. This is how important he is, to the extent that all the learning that was taking place throughout the generations, it's all just to prepare them so that they can eventually understand the secrets that were hidden by Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and were later revealed by Reb Moshe de Leon. And these secrets could not be revealed at the time of Shem Echad. It would have been dangerous. It's not hard to see the people at that time and the drive, the desire that they had for power. They were willing to learn any wisdom just to be able to take the power from it and to attack humanity with that power. And this actually happened. So this wisdom had to be hidden. Otherwise, the people would use it in horrible ways. But then humanity changed. Humanity is different now. Humanity has realized that violence is not the way for getting what you want. But now humanity is in a state where they don't have good information. They don't even know what to do with their desire to make life better. They don't know how to manifest better. They don't know how to create better. And therefore, the secrets were hidden exactly for them, for those who want to make humanity better. That's why there's a Torah. That's why there's a teaching in the first place. Teaching is to develop humanity. That's its purpose. And this is the purpose of language. This is the purpose of being able to define concepts and ideas and to express them through sound. It's not so we can control each other. It's not so we can insult each other. It's so that we can understand each other and ourselves, so that we can learn wisdom. It's only when the demonic takes over that we use these forces to create damage. And this damage is very powerful because this force is very powerful. We were given a very powerful force, the ability to create concept through sound. So when humanity will study these secrets, when humanity will pay attention to what's being revealed, they will understand how consequential these things are, how deeply meaningful they are, how different it is to experience life when your beliefs are different, when you understand the basis of your beliefs, and you understand the purpose. When humanity will wake up to these things, then in a short period of time, the entire experience, the entire interaction we have with life and each other will change in an extreme way. And only then will we be able to appreciate the gift that we've been given to exist as human beings on this planet. So may it happen soon.